Andy Stricker. Oop. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Andy Stricker and I are happy to be here with TCC. I've been coming to Telecoop and TCC, excuse me, ELCC. I'm sorry, I'm in 3 conferences this month. It's such a pleasure to be with the e-learning consortium of Colorado and to be here with Andy Stricker, my high school and college chum who we've been conducting research together and speaking here for several years. Andy, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and we'll begin by talking about transitional growth for leaders as bridging AI and worlds in a life worth living. Throughout the session, I'm going to periodically show you behind the scenes, bridging with another conference that I'm at currently as well. Over to you, Andy.
Oh, thank you, Santa. It's always wonderful to get an opportunity to share about our work. And I've been aware of the wonderful efforts with this group of people. So thank you for the invitation to share. We have a small group of people. Some of the people are listed on this title slide that participate in our community that we call Virtual Harmony. We've been getting together. I don't know, I guess, Cynthia, what I want to
2008.
quite a while. And basically what we do is we talk about our work and experiences in higher education, and we try to prototype and create these immersive uh, 3D world learning environments, and we bring in each of our areas of um, efforts to create places that we can experiment and prototype and possibly extend on the cutting edge of some of the possibilities. So in this particular presentation, we're talking about a simulation we worked on, and we're still working on it. It's dealing with the application of different ways of thinking about how to live a life that's worth living. And this um, overall framework of thinking about what makes for a life worth living comes out of Yale University. And there are a number of professors at the undergraduate college there and also divinity school that have put together an undergraduate course for all the Yale students to participate in. And in this course, they focus on the interesting dynamics when you have people that are high achievers and they are trying to get a sense of who they are, their talents as they think about their um, graduation from Yale to go into a profession and so forth. And they have come up with, over the years, some really amazing insights about personal and professional growth related to a meaningful life. And what we've done is we've integrated Native American ideals and concepts into this work by Yale. And so we brought together this tribal group. They're called the Bitterroot Salish, and they are located in Montana, and they historically have been with the Bitterroot Valley area. And interesting enough, the Clark expedition that Thomas Jefferson sent to scout out the purchase of the western half of the United States, became the western half of the United States, the Lewis and Clark expedition, they got into a really bad situation by the time they got to Montana, and they were befriended by the Montana Salish. And it's a wonderful story, but the brief version of this is the Montana Salish tribe gave the Lewis and Clark expedition food and shelter and guided them through the mountain range to get to the Pacific coast. And then when they came back, they protected their horses and helped them get back to the East Coast. So it's a wonderful story, and the federal government has never forgotten that generosity. And so we thought it'd be really interesting to bring their perspective about what makes for a life worth living into this simulation with the Yale model. So the premise of this particular effort is to help people in the professions. Many of them are in leadership roles, whether it's the medical community, legal, engineering, higher education, so forth, to be prepared to deal with complexity. And Columbia and Harvard have studied complexity. Perry and Knauf and Comp and others of their generational graduate student research work have shown that you can reach a plateau about midway through your professional journey in life where you consider yourself fully developed in the realms of your expertise and so forth. But they have found that when it comes to dealing with complexity, just the expertise qualifications are insufficient to deal with complexity that have no right or wrong solutions. There's no textbook approaches to solving those complex problems, and they often have trade-offs associated with issues that have values related to the degree of harm or the potential negative consequences of decisions or approaches to those complex problems. And when the leaders have not really continued their development in moral based reasoning, they are challenged when it comes to considering all the different dynamics or making a decision in those complex situations. So we wanted to address that in this simulation. We wanted to present some of those developmental aspects that can help professionals acquire the sense that this matters for their continual development. Now, what we've done is we've taken particularly also the work of Henry Nouwen and Carl Jung. These are individuals that stress that there's a really interesting phenomenon in life when, as particularly as a professional, in order for it to have greater empathy, connectivity to different situations and people and the dynamics of the social technological realm that many of us work within as educators, you really need to be able to have people that can learn to trust you and connect with you from their life experiences. And so, what they have shared in their work is that this is often promoted your ability to connect and establish trust by your willingness to share the things in life that have been difficult for you. And Henry Nouwen referred to this as being wounded. And so all of us probably can share that we've had these sense of wounds that we've encountered in life and we don't want to ever go through such experiences, but when we come out from those, it deepens our appreciation for what almost all of us in life go through, and we can connect in better ways to people that we're leading. So um, I'm going to turn this slide over to you, Sin, because thank you.
Well, much of our work occurs within a virtual world. So here we're sitting, a few of us are in virtual harmony, which exists on in a farmhouse in Alabama at Andy's location. And he is self-hosting this open source virtual world. So for those of you who've ever been in a virtual world, it looks like Second Life, but it's not. It's actually using open source software. And we gather together. We've been meeting in the early years. We met every week, and in the later years we met every other week, or now once a month, right? And we get together and we've worked on quite a few simulations, over 19 regions or grids of simulations. And we've looked at Sakurajima, we've looked at the mission to Mars. We worked and when I say simulation, I mean we're simulating a real world kind of experience, but we're also taking a deep look at both the emotional and psychological impact of it. And we use design thinking. And of course, what we're doing is we're trying to understand as we create, imagine, and explore these various phenomena. And most of us are getting older. Have you guys noticed this? For me, this is my 50th year of computing. Wow, right? I started on in Fortran on punch cards, and as I think about my evolution over time and the deep probing experiences we have in these spaces, I remember coming to TCC when it was teleco-op in Estes Park in 2007 and all our shared experiences there. And so, what we wanted to do today is share with you the fact that we recognize that everyone has perhaps wounds or impact from current events, things that are going on in your life, your professional practice, or as you're sharing the richness of why it matters to be us. What is our impact? How do we make a difference in this world? And as we grow older, how do we kind of pull into focus and clarify the value of what we've done, right? So, we have bridged the virtual world, a place of fantasy where we can embody and embrace and reflect these things. And we've also included some AI non-player characters, Blossom and Scout, and some others. And we've set this scene. Now, this is kind of bridging with a simulation we did a year or two ago, which looked at early Westerns. When I say early, I mean from the 1600s and Margaret Cavendish. And we've been building on a theme of looking at culture and literature and all of these various concepts to bring them all into focus. And we subtitled it A Life Worth Living, not just to bridge with Yale's professional identity model, but also to think about our own lives and what's worth living. What would you carry forward? Well, this is a bunch of us sitting here planning and thinking, and you can see from the posters around us that these are going to be some of the themes we're talking about today. Andy, back over to you.
Great. Well, the research in wounded healer leadership highlights these five common characteristics, and uh, one is the personal experiences of pain and trauma. And as I was saying earlier, when we go through these kinds of experiences in life, it helps to develop what some would say a profound understanding of what suffering in life involves. And that also, paradoxically, can help us to improve our resilience, knowing that we can get through difficult times. As Winston Churchill was fond of saying, that when you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking.
Don't stop.
And so that's one of the things that we want to help people to see and appreciate is we can't avoid difficult times and trauma and pain, but we can build up strength to persevere. And this can lead to self-transcendence. This is another characteristic. And what we refer to as self-transcendence is sort of like um, the Emerson way of thinking about it at Harvard, where Ralph Waldo Emerson talked about that, we have to go beyond ourselves. And he used a word called transcendental. Um, and Henry David Thoreau also said that as much, that we have to go beyond seeing the obvious and have a deeper appreciation of things that connect all of us into a common purpose and a common good, and that there's a deeper meaning to the life that we see visibly around us. And the third characteristic is this living growth. Um, that's importance of understanding that we never arrive at the full measure of what we can develop into. And this is part of the key message in the Yale Life Worth Living um, work with their undergraduate students. That even though you feel like you have once you complete your degree at Yale, have what you need to have an open mind to continue your development. And the fourth characteristic, which I really like, and we talk about this with our military contacts and colleagues, is calm and chaos. When you have this groundedness and sense of who you are and what matters in life or a life worth living, it can give you a sense that you can persevere. And when and it's really particularly in a leadership role when people look to you for guidance and mentorship, and to have confidence that you can navigate through it, as the Churchill would say, keep walking. You can display this calm because it's genuinely inside of you. And the fifth one is highly related to this, and that is that you have this enduring hope and perspective, and that you can go through dark times to a better place. And the Navajo concept of the four worlds, which we'll talk about here in a moment, talks to this. And so many of you will recognize key features of the thinking that we'll share. And it's worthwhile just to highlight the Yale model quickly, but they have a U-shaped trajectory where if you look at the left side at the very top, it says autopilot. And for many of us that are high achievers, we put ourselves into very busy schedules. Sin talked about her busy life and schedules. And what the Yale professors, Volk and others, have shared is that it's very difficult for high achievers to have time for reflection and to say, am I doing the things with my busy life that can lead to meaningfulness? Am I making full use of the opportunities, not just the application of my skills in my vocational professional work, but in touching and making a difference in the lives of others? And as you reflect, you go further down that left-hand side, and you start looking at your role in terms of effectiveness, not just getting things done, but in a qualitative way. So if you're a physician and your family practice, you would begin to. And when I was at Vanderbilt, I was with the Vanderbilt Medical School for several years, and we would work with our medical students to help them encourage to see their medical practice went beyond just the application of medical knowledge. It had to deal with the relationships, the empathy, the understanding of the wholeness of the health of their patients over time. And as you look at this upon yourself, you gain self-awareness. You want to really deepen, as it were, the things that seem obvious to you that if you would take the time, you would like to accomplish these things in your life to reach in deeper ways, more meaningful ways in your practice, and if you're a professor or teacher and so forth. So you become aware of these gaps, so to speak. And when you become aware of these gaps, you can actually then transcend um, the mundane parts of your life to something that actually can be very transformative. And this is the transcendence. This is the Emerson Thoreau transcendental perspectives. So you begin to ask yourself, okay, what must I do? And that's a tipping point. Now, Columbia Lee Kneffenkoff said with Perry at Harvard, they said, what does it take to have that tipping point in your life? If you go through this left side reflectiveness to the point that you see that there's a need for change or continued growth, what would it take to cause you to actually engage in that growth? And that's a tough one. It's very, very difficult. From their research, they have had many opportunities working with professionals across different disciplines, a variety of disciplines, and it's a common challenge for people to have the insight that there's a need for change and growth, but yet actually carry forward with that effort. And that's what our simulation is trying to do. Our simulation is actually trying to help people to go from that insight to actual uh, active roles to improve upon their life and living a life worth living. As you move up on the right-hand side, there is an emphasis fundamentally on values. Now, Sen and I, we've written papers and book chapters on this over the years about values-based leadership. What does it really mean to say that you're guided in your choices and your behaviors and your leadership with others based on your values? The ancient way of talking about values is virtues. And so, you would want to familiarize yourself with those virtues. What kinds of virtues should you have that would produce the kinds of values and the actions that you engage in from day to day as you interact with others? And when you do this, then you can get a vision that takes you from where you're at to a future that you actually are purposely trying to shape and becoming. And then as you go towards that vision, then you create a strategy and you say, okay, what would I need to do in the first year, second year, and third year, and so forth. And this is exactly what Yale does with their students. They take them through this process and you build the habits associated with living a life worth living. So what we're going to do, and as we get into the next few slides here, is we're going to talk about, okay, what's the connective point with Native American thinking about this model? Sam?
Well, I'm going to step in here for a moment.
Mm.
Um, I don't talk about it often, but I do come from my grandparents were Native American, and I remember when this movie came out. How many of you have ever seen Koyaanisqatsi? In the text chat, give us a yes or no if you're able to. If you're driving, don't bother. I always have to say that to my students because they're always on the go, right? Okay, well, it's an amazing movie, and there are like 3 versions of it. You can even see pieces of it or the entire thing on YouTube. It's Koyaanisqatsi, and it means life out of balance or the crazy life, right? And as Andy was saying, I kind of live the crazy life because I seem to be always overscheduled, right? This is my 376th presentation. And being painfully shy, I keep count. So I'm always marveling, wow, I did it again, you know. But so when you first start seeing this, I recall from 1982, Ralph Nader sent me tickets to this. I was working on Capitol Hill for clean air and clean water rights, and he sent them over from his office to ours, and we went to see quite a few movies together, but I remember this one, 1982. And it begins with, it's like life is on fast forward. And so you're zooming through your commute to work, your travels through life, and of course you start to think about it and you're like, whoa, what a blur, you know. And I remember that impression that it left on me, and that I need to stop and think about our impact, think about what we're doing, think about where we're going. You know, a state of life that calls for another way of living, you know, and so we'll move ahead. But I love the fact that you've integrated these cultural moments, and of course a shout out to Kay and Chris for that wonderful K drama and K-pop session just previous to ours. It makes you think about how people live and why our ways of living, knowing, and doing are so important. So Andy, tell us why you integrated the Navajo Four Worlds into our model.
Right, wonderful. The the notion of Koyaanisqatsi, that's um, sort of the Hapai perspective, is that when you're out of balance, if you're moving so fast in life that you have no time for reflection, and you're not transitioning well across the different levels of existence. And the Navajo talk about these levels of transitions as worlds. And so you move from world to world as eternal beings. And some of you from the Judeo-Christian perspective would recognize that there's common similarities. As a matter of fact, when the Jesuits, who are the scholars of the Catholic Church, reached the Montana Salish soon after the Lewis and Clark expedition, and they were sharing their model of the creation of the world and the darkness and the world was formed out of this darkness, and then there came light, and animals and people were created and so forth. The Salish were like, well, yes, we're familiar with this. And so if you look at it, color codes are used in talking about the four worlds. So the first world is represented by the color black, the void, the darkness, before things take form and shape. And in this model of thinking about life and the transitional points in life, the Native American view is that we're all existing at this point, and but we're in a non-shapeable form, and we transition into the second world at some point to become spirit-like, and so we take on greater form. And this color is turquoise, and they that represents um, the ethereal components of every human being, that we have this deep spiritual essence of who we are. And by the way, all this stays with us as we keep transitioning. So you basically grow into more complete as a human entity. As you move into the third world, which they would say is the times that we're living in now, you take on a body. And in this body expression, it's represented by the color of yellow for fertility and life giving and so forth. And but this world and the third aspect is very problematic in sense of the problems and challenges, and there is reason for that. The problems and challenges in this Native American perspective shape us. They help us to understand more deeply the nature of existence and working through those problems. And so we are meant in this model to actually grow from our challenges, and those challenges shape us. This is sort of like a Japanese perspective in kintsugi, where they the brokenness and things in life can shatter us, but they also, if we put those broken pieces back together in our life, they can be done in such a way that we can become uh, pretty amazing as human beings, because we're able to connect with others that are broken, and we can have greater empathy and so forth. So then as you move into the fourth world, the world after this, that's represented by white, and that's more of a unification of a greater understanding of the transitions we've been through in these previous worlds to a state of enlightenment. So it's a pretty fascinating model. Yes, Sin.
At that point, I need to give a shout out to
Yep.
Barbara Truman, who was a keynote here at Elk in, I think, 2017.
Yep.
She was a member of our virtual harmony and was a basis for many of our designs. And unfortunately, we lost her in 2021, but we carry her in our hearts.
Yes.
So,
And we have,
Andy, yeah,
oh, yes.
go right
Uh,
ahead.
in our simulation, we have the tribal village, the Montana Salish Flathead Reservational up in the mountains there, um, the Bitterroot Mountain Range in western Montana. It's gorgeous, by the way, if you ever get a chance to go there. But what we did was we represent the transition point in the Yale model in a cave. So Sen showed pictures earlier of the cave that she created in a presentation
I'll cut
just
away to
recently did.
that for just a moment, Andy.
Good, thank
Since
you.
it is about the virtual world, first I'm going to give a shout out to Front Range Community College, and Kay and Chris and Kate Haggerty created this model to represent for their degree programs. And what's cool about it, we're all connected, is the fact that they're talking about design thinking, and they have classes on it. And that's, of course, what we're practicing here. So let me bounce back to the cave. And of course, the cave is over to one side. Let's see, I'm having just a little lag. So let me use a teleporter. And this is what I love about virtual world simulations is you're never late for class, right? You just bounce on over and here I am. Now this is a poster for those of you unfamiliar. This is the virtual world's best practices in education where we met last week And of course, I'm standing outside our 3D poster. So if you were going to do a poster for a virtual world simulation, this is an example of our cave. And all I did was abstract the feeling of it. It's not exactly like what we have in ours, but I have the elements like the horses, because you can go on horseback rides in our simulation. And of course, you have nature and you have all this. And of course, I had to put a little love in there because you can't talk about empathy and wounded healers without without elements that really make you feel like you're coming to life. And that's what I love about all of this, the greenery, the expression of life and vibrancy. And so I pieced this together for my group. And of course, one of our members, Dragon Doe, is a little distressed whenever we talked about the bear as well as the wolf in our simulation. She felt that the bear was too much of a threat. So I put him up top coming out of his own cave. But in our design. But let me take you inside. We're going to, the cave represents a hidden space in our simulation. And I'm just going to have a seat. I took a device that I created in 2006 and turned it into this seating arrangement. And I have a spirit animal running through it. For those of you who do any virtual world design, you'll notice he's just a flat texture running around in a circle as a GIF. But what's interesting about it is he gives a sense of vibrancy in what we're doing here. Then we have scenes. If you ever come by here, it is free and accessible. And of course, you can pick up gifts by clicking on an object. It gives you a collection of gifts and things to retain. We also have scenes from the actual simulation in our open source world with some of us standing there and planning it. And we're going to talk about some of these images and elements as we get into the remaining slides. You'll notice I have them on a viewer that goes forward every 35 seconds so that guests of the simulation can see how we planned it, right? Behind the scenes, the theory craft behind it, why it matters, and then, of course, what they can do to make it their own. Well, back to you, Andy, and I'll bring the
Okay.
slides back up.
Thank you.
I d
Thank you.
Sure, but I just wanted to take people behind it because it's not just about showing slides. It's the fact that these are real spaces that have a poignancy for us,
Yes.
something that we share. So here we go. There you go,
Thank you.
Andy.
So the sacred hoop is common across various Native American tribal cultures, and it represents harmony and balance in life, that we're all interconnected with all living things, and we have an effect upon others and the environment in which we do the things that we do. And so in our village that we've recreated in the Bitterroot Mountain range of the simulation, it's a pretty large simulation space, so you can travel up into the mountains and get to the village, and then when you work your way through the village, through the various stops, and we'll talk about those stops here in a few minutes, but you get to the cave and you walk through a waterfall to get into the cave, and then you walk through a sacred hoop, and in that sacred hoop space of the cave, you will have the opportunity to involve in a 3D interactive hologram of each of the worlds, the four worlds that I just talked about. Okay, Sen?
Now, we just had a question about is there a link or something we could share? So I'm going to share first the exhibits page, which is open in Second Life for anyone to come by to collect content, to see some of the exhibits I just demonstrated, and to pick up free gifts. And the gifts are full permission. You can use them for your practice, for your classes, or any of your work. So here's another scene. This is a behind the scenes. You're welcome, Ryan. Uh, this is a behind the scenes at Virtual Harmony. So this is the actual space that Andy Stricker is hosting at his farmhouse in Alabama. And he's doing it on a Mac server. I always like to take you behind the scenes to talk about what we're doing, where we do it, how we do it, and the fact that we have to do it on a budget because we're the ones paying for it, in case you're wondering. This is not a school sponsored event. This is a fellowship of friends coming together since 2008. and designing all kinds of spaces. We began with the Mars expedition, which I submitted for the Defense Game Tech's Federal Virtual World Challenge in 2010, and we won the $25,000 grand prize for our simulation. So if you're wondering, are we just playing with toys? Does this matter? Well, to us personally, it deeply matters. But the world has also recognized the value of these simulations. For the Mars project, it was reflecting on whether we should go to the moon, go to Mars, or do a proof of concept for both, or where should we direct our energy, our attention, our money? And then, of course, what would we gain from these kinds of pursuits? And if we were traveling to Mars, how would we live there? How would we stay psychologically healthy? How would we think through all the very important parts of the puzzle beyond the Herculean effort of getting there? Anyway, so here you're seeing images from our planning and testing on a Sunday, just about 3 weeks ago, I guess, or 4 weeks ago when I took these photos. And of course, you see the sacred hoop in the lower left image. It's kind of embedded within part of the cave. There are secretive parts of the cave that are almost like discovery elements for our own selves, or how we feel about each other. And of course, uh, I'm just showing you this so you get a sense of what are we talking about here. I'll move back in, and I noticed the
Okay.
time, Andy. We only have 8 minutes, so we may have to
Okay.
move a little bit faster. Go right
All
ahead.
right. And one of the things that we always like to do with each of our efforts is collect data so that we can go back and look at what we think is happening with the user experience and the indicators of insights that may be acquired by participating in the activities of the simulation. So we have a dashboard that we've have built for this simulation that you can go in and extract the data for SAS or SPSS analysis and so forth in different formats and reports. Next slide, please, Sin.
Sure. I just want to make one comment. In case the captions are over it, you're looking at an ideal or a way of thinking of Blossom Bitterroot here, who's one of our AI companions. So if you're wondering, how do we do the AI companion? We're going to talk about the language on this slide, but please realize that that's being represented by a Chat GPT trained version that Dr. Stricker's worked with. Go ahead, Andy.
So yes, several years ago, MIT and Stanford had worked on an effort to encapsulate the Montana Salish language, and they captured uh, thousands and thousands of phrases and words and archived it. And we tapped into the archive and we mapped their concepts in their native language to the actual steps of the simulation. So you can actually hear and learn about the Salish thinking associated with some of these concepts in their natural tongue and as it's translated. So as Sam was highlighting, you'll hear it from the AI bot as well as get the interpretation of that as in the activities of itself. Next slide, please, Sin.
Well, before we go to it, I'd like to, that's an important comment. Often people ask me, am I culturally uh, uh, disappropriating other people's cultures? And I just wanted to put a little shout out to the fact that we recognize that these languages, we're losing them, and we're losing these very important ways of thinking, knowing, and doing. And it's very important to those of us who have lost some of our culture, those of us who are Native American or have, my great grandmother was Native American, and, you know, we're not as connected anymore. We're all disconnected. And so it's this notion of we don't want to lose the language. We don't want to lose the magic and the history and the importance of all of these different ways of living, knowing, and being. So we're weaving them into our various simulations as a preservation and an honor and a tribute to them.
Okay.
Here's the next slide.
And we don't have to spend any length of time on this slide other than just I'll highlight that for each point of the model, there is a destination in the village. So as you work your way from TP to TP through the cave and back up through the TPs on the other side of the village, you'll learn through activities each one of these points that can be further highlighted. Next slide, please, Cindy. And so at each destination point, these are the interactive board that you engage in the activities. So you'll hear the Salish recordings. You will have the AI Blossom will generate in front of you. She takes on the form of Native American dress of the Salish tribe, and then you'll have a Salish guide. And what we're doing in this particular simulation is we've been experimenting with the prompts and the primes for stimulating a conversational beginning place with the bots interacting with one another to stimulate the active engagement of the human participant. And so you got a three-way dialogue basically that starts out, and then as you work your way through the activity, that dialogue becomes more focused, associated with the things that we're trying to share by having them engaged. And then there's
I want to,
I'm
oh, go
sorry.
right ahead. Sorry.
And then there's at that point a sort of an activity for wrapping up with a reflection and the insights that you believe that you have taken from those activities, and all that is saved in our database that we can go back to and look at. So, okay,
Well,
sorry,
the point I was going to interject is in 2013, 2014, some of my doctoral students, I taught them how to create AI bots and how to bring them into virtual world simulations like Second Life, and then also how to interact with stories, right? But the problem, what I didn't do, I didn't clarify the fact that they needed to reset them. The ones I gave them had my account attached to them. So as a shout out to all our instructional designers who are out there and thinking about what kinds of learning activities and stories could you use with these kinds of things. One word of warning, I use the local chat for these interactions as a matter of convenience in the script. So they were very dynamic and very expressive, and you didn't have to know a slash command to activate them. Well, the problem was it was right before a holiday. You know how students are, right? They run out the door and they left them all too close together. So the bots all started talking to one another faster and faster. How many people teach security? If you teach security or any subjects like that, you will know that you can get crosstalk when bots get to talking. And if they talk faster and faster over time, that's called a distributed denial of service attack, in case you're wondering. So that's the word of warning and caution here is when you design these things, make sure you understand their behavior when you're not around. That was a surprise to me because the unfortunate service went offline for a couple of weeks, and I worked with their system administrators to talk about it and forestall it for the future. But that was a learning activity for me, let me tell you. Okay, Andy,
okay.
back to the
So this is a very quick view of the village area, and you can see the mountain range in the background. And there is a river that runs through the range called the Bitterroot River. We were trying to be as faithful as we knew to be of the actual place in Montana, but there's a lot, as Sin was talking about earlier, there's a lot to explore in these settings. We do that with all of our simulations. Almost everything we put out there is interactive. So as you walk around, you can touch on things and have things happen and be engaged. So we like that element of the structure, but also the serendipitous nature of the environment, so that I think we call them Easter eggs, right, Sin, where they can actually
mhm.
discover things that would further capture their interest. So, next one. Now, this is a quick depiction. If some of you do make it to the simulation in Virtual Harmony, you'll see that when you're in the cave, you'll go through each of the four worlds, and it's a immersive 360-degree hologram experience. So you can turn every which way and see representations, and there is a voice guided informative discussion about what the characteristics are for each of the worlds and the kinds of things that are important for each human being in those worlds as we transition through them in our life eternal journey. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we keep all this data intact, and maybe at some point down the road we'll have some of that to share associated with the impactfulness. The people that we've had go through it really enjoy that kind of interaction and seeing the connectiveness between Native American beliefs and perspectives about the meaning of life and what makes your life worth living compared to other models like the one from Yale or Carl Jung or Emerson and uh, Henry Nouwen, the wounded healer. And so as the early explorers Lewis and Clark found out there's a lot of common ground actually that exist between Native American cultures and their perspectives about what makes for a life worth living. So,
The next slide's just a souvenir from our 3D poster where I was trying to embrace some of this, how we feel about our simulation and the design of it and how we feel about our world. And so you're just seeing 3 images of where you saw me physically just now in Second Life at the at the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. If you wanted to see other posters and other content there, let's see, I'm going to switch the chat. VWBPE. If you're in Second Life, just type VWBPE and in the world map and hit enter, and you will see all the regions pop up for the conference. They run this every year. They also give us the Thinker Award for lifetime achievement in education. So it's something to think about. Okay, so hey, Andy, we're now reached the end of our slides. We're open for questions and any final thoughts on our next directions, Andy, as we move into the next path in our lives together.
yes, one of the things that I'll just throw out quickly is, we build these simulations to test new opportunities and frontiers with emerging technologies, and we know that they're imperfect, and actually there are risk factors, and we speak to that. If you want to go to our website at uh, vharmonyarts.com, you can actually read about some of the things that we highlight that Sen was pointing out earlier that you want to be aware of as an educator about the risk factors of these types of environments and working with emerging technologies and so forth. At the same uh, um, consideration, we also emphasize, particularly for graduate students and above, the benefits of the literacy development associated with these emerging technologies and a deeper understanding of the role that every person plays in this augmented environment. Whether you're talking about immersive 3D worlds or any augmented use of tools that we use to support whatever it is that we're doing at hand, and that whatever form AI might take, for example. And so much like what Yale does with their students in AI is they don't discourage the use of AI, but they expect their students to be aware and to reflect upon the pros and cons of the use of the AI for an assignment and to write up their assessments in the use of AI. So it becomes an activity that deepens their literacy understanding of these emerging, because all through, as all of you can share, all through our lives, there's always new developments. There's always new frontiers with these technologies, and what's the right balance associated with their use, and how do we help our students gain that deeper understanding for that balance?
And
So we,
Andy, as we're wrapping, I should introduce us. Andy taught
yeah.
Andy taught quantum mechanics and intelligent agents at Oxford. He worked with Donald Broadbent, who was famous for coining the term selective attention and was a colleague of Alan Turing's. So we're all connected in interesting ways. Me, I have taught for many years, and before that, 29 years. And before that, I worked for Air Force Space Command in the Situation Room software, if you might have seen in the movie War Games, although it's nothing like that. In any event, I want to thank my co-speaker. I know we're at the end of time. And are there any last questions before we wrap? Let's see, we have one. It says, thank you all for coming. Oh, that's our moderator. If you have a moment, would be willing to fill out a survey, please click the tiny URL. Thank you, ELCC, for a wonderful conference, ELK, and thanks to our organizers for inviting us and having a fantastic conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy and Cynthia.
Okay.
That was awesome.